Welcome back to this I-24 News Evening Edition. This is One-on-One. The Falun Gong is a spiritual discipline first introduced in China in 1992. It combines the practice of meditation and slow-moving exercises with a moral philosophy. But since 1996, the practice became a threat to the Chinese government, and those involved were persecuted and sent to labor camps for re-education. In 2006, former Canadian Secretary of State David Kilgour and human rights lawyer David Mattis published the report into allegations of organ harvesting of Falun Gong participations in China, which concluded the large numbers of Falun Gong people were victims of systematic organ harvesting throughout China. And joining me tonight is the Honorable David Kilgour, former Canadian Secretary of State for Asia Pacific. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming to our studio and for giving us this interview. I need to understand, we just spoke a little bit before, and you told me that you are banned from Russia.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, as you said in your introduction, David Mattis and I wrote a book called Bloody Harvest, and it came out in 2009. And in 2011, a court in southern Russia was presented with the book and decided that the book was terrorist literature, if you can imagine. All we do in the book is criticize the party state or the government of China, and yet a court in Russia has decided that this is terrorist literature and has banned both Mattis and myself from going to Russia. The case is under appeal in the European Court of Human Rights, but at this point, two of us have been banned for 2 years. And as I sort of laughingly say, that's a badge of honor as far as I'm concerned. Mr. Putin is one of my least favorite world leaders of any country. Of 192 countries, he would be pretty close to the bottom for me.
Yes, so we will talk about the human rights violation in Russia in a bit, but what did you find out exactly in your report? What is the shocking evidence that you found out about the Falun Gong?
Well, I guess in a nutshell, we found out that President Jiang Zemin decided in 1999 that there were between 70 and 100 million practitioners of Falun Gong across China. For example, there wasn't a park in Beijing that wasn't full of people every morning doing those exercises you mentioned. Mm-hmm. So he decided that the practice of Falun Gong was growing so quickly that there were already more people practicing Falun Gong than there were Communist Party members. And their values, if you can imagine, are basically truth, compassion, and forbearance. The same values of every religion.
Human being.
Every human being, exactly.
In the world.
So these values are completely out of sync with the values of the Communist Party in China. So he decided that given the explosive growth in the number of people doing it and the values, that they were an enemy of the party. And so he's been waging war on the Falun Gong community ever since, and it continues today. And David Mattis and I we have about 52 kinds of proof, and we thought, the two of us went into it with our open minds, but the evidence was so overwhelming that it was happening that we basically wrote in our book and our reports. And anyone can, by the way, can get our report in 18 languages if they just go on david-kilgour.com on the internet. That the party state in China is killing Falun Gong practitioners, men and women, who have been convicted of nothing, nada. Let me give an example, if I may. If somebody from, let's say, Ottawa, take a Canadian example, flies to Shanghai, they pay huge amounts of money, $80,000, $90,000, depending on what the organ is. They check into the #1 People's Hospital in Shanghai. They have to get blood tests and tissue tests. Then they go on the computer, and it says there's a match for this person from Ottawa out in work camp, forced labor camp number 300 or something. Somebody who happens to be a match on the computer is dragged into an operating room, given a light anesthetic. All of their vital organs are taken out, and the organs are then flown from, say, the work camp to Shanghai in a People's Liberation Army plane, and the person there gets the new liver or kidney or whatever it is, flies back to Ottawa, and
he has no idea that he basically was participating maybe in the murder of another human being.
Yeah, and the worst example we have is a man, I won't say what countries he's from, but I met him. And he went to Shanghai, and it took 8 sets of kidneys were brought to him to see if they were compatible by a military surgeon in uniform. Major Tan was his name. And the 8th set of kidneys was a match, so he's doing fine, and 8 human beings have been killed, if you like, to order, like some lobster in a terribly grotesque restaurant.
So you come to Israel, and what? Where is Israel on this point?
Israel is the leader in the world in having combated this vile commerce, inhuman commerce. Your country, and I said this today in the Knesset, your members of the Knesset, along with your transplant community doctors, Dr. Jay Labby, for example, Dr. Jay Labby discovered several years ago that one of his patients needed a new heart, and he was told that if he went to China, he would get his heart on a particular day. 2 weeks later, and Dr. Labby said, well, how are you going to do that? And he said, I'm not asking any questions, the patient did. And when Dr. Labby realized what was going on, he passed a law which basically criminalizes anybody going from Israel to China for an organ. And we want every country to do that, every rule of law country, every democratic country to do that. And I think we're quite close to the point now where others are going to follow the example of Israel and make it an offense to buy a trafficked organ. You don't even have to say China, because there's only one country on earth where the government of the country kills people and then sells their organs to nationals and to foreigners. Imagine me saying this to you here. It's almost unbelievable, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. You're saying it, and it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that in 2014, that in this time, that we're all so open, we saw so many horrific things during the history, that this still is existing in our time. Yeah. How come?
Well, I've spent a lot of time reading about this and talking to victims who've managed to get out of these forced labor camps. Oh, by the way, the forced labor camps, they make everything from sweaters to slippers to Christmas decorations. They do this as subcontractors. The people in these camps work about 16 hours a day, terrible conditions. They get paid nothing. They can be sent to these camps on the signature of a policeman for up to 3 years, and are. The system, by the way, comes right out of Stalin's Russia and Adolf Hitler's Germany. And Mao brought this system into China in the 50s, and it's still going. Now, somebody's going to no doubt phone the station and say, well, we've stopped this. And yes, do you know what we gather what they've done is they've announced that they've stopped it, the labor camps. But in fact, they now call them detoxification centers. So it's just a PR game they're playing with the world. And unfortunately, too many journalists in the world buy this stuff that the government of China puts out.
So, first of all, before I will ask you, because almost the whole world is doing business with China, and I don't understand why you don't boycott, for example, China, and you boycott other countries. But how much do you estimate the business of organs?
Well, a human being, Falun Gong practitioner, for example, in China, if they're killed and their vital organs are sold, if you put the price tags beside the heart and the liver and the kidneys, it adds up to about $500,000 per person.
$500,000 per person.
So we've estimated that it could bring in about $1 billion a year to the doctors, the People's Liberation Army, and to the hospitals.
$1 million a year.
Yeah, so that's a lot of money, so that's when they announced that they're going to stop taking organs from prisoners. We take it with a large grain of salt. We dearly wish that they would, and that's why I'm here in Israel, and why David Matus and I have traveled to something like 50 countries. We're trying to get enough pressure created by people perhaps watching us now, who can go to their local Chinese ambassador and say, what on earth are you doing? And the ambassador will say, oh, we're not doing this, this is just made up. And they can ask the Chinese official about, well, then why don't you come up with some proof that you're not doing it? When a lot of people, including many people, have come up with very solid evidence that it's happening.
Were you successful to make anybody from the Chinese government or officials to listen to you?
Yes, they are. We know that they're getting a lot of pressure on this issue. It's a public relations disaster for them, as you said a minute ago. To be doing this in the 21st century to your own people I think there's no other nation in history that has ever done this. So they're now starting to make announcements, it seems like every week, that they're going to stop doing it. I hope they do, as I said, but we're quite convinced they have not stopped doing it. But so, as you also indicated, Lucy, people think that if they were to speak out against it, that somehow it would affect their trade with China. And the example I gave in the Knesset today was that Václav Havel was told in Czechoslovakia that if he brought the Dalai Lama to Prague, that there would be no more trade between then the Czechoslovakia and China. He brought the Dalai Lama to Prague, and it seemed to make no difference in their trade. Our Prime Minister Harper, who of course was here quite recently, and talked about values, he made the statement in 2009 that Canada would not be beholden to the almighty buck with China. And everyone said, oh, you're going to lose all your trade with China. Bombardier, one of our big companies, announced its biggest deal ever with China about the time our Prime Minister was saying this. I don't think it makes any difference. Norway, for example, gave the Nobel Peace Prize to Liu Xiaobo. Mm-hmm. They were told they were going to be absolutely finished. I don't think it's made any difference with Norway's trade.
So I'm going back to the question that I asked. How come no one is boycotted? China is not being boycotted by the world. How come the economy in China is actually going up? It's actually the rising empire in front of the United States. And when it's doing this horrible acts in human rights, how come the world is not saying, okay, maybe we'll put sanctions on you, like we're putting sanctions on other countries like Iran?
Yeah. I wish the world would do that. And all you have to do is to say, we're not going to invest in China, any money in China until you stop doing this. We're not going to, the civilized world is not going to treat you as a member of the international community until you stop doing this. All of these things, anything would help. I must maybe mention that I had some constituents who invested their life savings in a pharmaceutical business in China. This was probably 10 years ago. And $20 million they invested in the business. And after about a year and a half, the man who had used to run the business had become the mayor of the local town. He got the business closed, padlocked the gates, the employees were all out of work. They lost every single penny of their investment in China. There's absolutely no rule of law in China. And I wish people who might be seeing us now would keep that in mind before they invest their savings in a country without the rule of law.
You've been traveling a lot in the world. You specialize in so many different arenas. Where can you put your finger and say this is the place where human rights are being violated in the worst manner?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Unfortunately, it's sometimes hard to choose. China is certainly the worst in terms of this issue. No other country on earth kills its own people for their organs. North Korea is certainly, as everybody knows, is right up there at the top. Iran is right up there at the top. So it would be probably, in my view, it would be North Korea, Iran, China would be the worst three, the three worst offenders at this point.
When you come to Israel, where do you put Israel in human rights violations?
Well,
be very comfortable to answer the question.
Well, I was talking to somebody about this morning, and as somebody said, every time a new apartment is built in Gaza, or in the West
Palestinian
Bank.
In the West Bank.
Yes, West Bank. Everything good that Israel has done comes under complete fire. And I sent a speech I made on the Holocaust recently to a friend of mine in Britain,